Why do people want me to watch this so bad?
Good morning, John. I'm going to talk today about why I think a lot of the maps that we see around elections are kind of lying to us. And I do think that they are. But first, let's talk a little bit about what I think makes...
Is this about how he's saying that the maps imply that these counties have shifted right in terms of, like, how many people voted for Trump? But in reality, it only showed their shift from 2020 in terms of the proportion of people who showed up. So even if the same number of people voted for Trump, if less people turned out for Kamala, okay, then yeah, I said all this. Yeah, I said all this. All right, then it's about like depressed blue votes rather than increased red votes. Okay, yeah, I mean, then yeah, we're in harmony on this one then. It's a bit more, but skip, I guess. Well, what's the bit more? People keep alluding to a bit more.
A graphical representation of data into a thing that is lying by looking at this graph. This is a graph that was posted on Twitter and then spread a lot around Twitter in order to show how odd it was that Joe Biden got so many votes in the 2020 election, almost as if a bunch of those votes were fake. But then they weren't able to fake it this time for a reason. I mean, look, Joe Biden got almost double what Kamala Harris got, except you're smart enough that you check and you see that the zero on the x-axis is 50 million people. So it actually looks more like this. And also, you probably instinctively know that Joe Biden didn't get double the votes of Kamala Harris, so it would probably raise a red flag and you'd check. But there's actually a much worse graph crime going on here that you probably didn't see. It's the kind that we see more and more these days when the job of being the media has spread to just whoever can get the most attention at any given moment, which is that the data is wrong. The 2024 column here is the number of votes that have been counted so far. California counts ballots extremely slowly because their laws are kind of weird, and so do several of the other West Coast states. So saying, isn't it weird that Joe Biden got so many votes? I'm just asking questions. Where did those votes come from? Fill in the blank with your own bias.
I mean, we're still seeing basically the same results, though, right? Like proportionally, right? Trump is still 4.5 million votes ahead of Kamala Harris. Like, it's a massive defeat in the popular vote. And Kamala Harris is at 69 million. So, like, votes are still getting counted, but, like, whether or not so Kamala Harris's blue bar right here has gone from here to here. And Trump's has gone from here to here. AKA, Trump got just as many votes as last time. Kamala Harris is down, like, 12 million votes. I mean, the story remains the same, basically. Like the swing states that he won with only a few thousand each, the elections decided by 100,000 or few people. Yeah. Well, that's how the Electoral College works. I'm not defending it. I know that. But, like, that doesn't change the fact that Kamala Harris got blown out. It's pathetic.
So far, California counts ballots extremely slowly because their laws are kind of weird, and so do several of the other West Coast states. So saying, isn't it weird that Joe Biden got so many votes? I'm just asking questions. Where did those votes come from? Fill in the blank with your own biases. It seems that this graph was either created by someone who was ignorant or someone who had bad intentions. In actuality, once all the votes are counted, Kamala's vote total will probably be very close to Joe Biden's, which...
I don't think that's true, though. What percentage of California's votes have been counted? How far up are we on that? 58% reporting. So if it keeps the current proportion and it's 3/5 of the way done, more or less, Kamala Harris could get an extra 3-4 million, still down like 8 million from Joe Biden. So 8-7 million votes, quote unquote, missing. But that would also mean that Donald Trump, by a few million votes, did better than in 2020. Again, like, the narrative isn't changing here. Yeah, the same story is happening here, Thane. Exactly. The underlying, like, the information that we're using to arrive at these conclusions is changing, but the conclusions aren't. It's just altering, like, the work, the basic arithmetic that you have to do to reach the same truth.
Which is maybe a little bit weird considering that Joe Biden is historically unpopular and she is his vice president, but I digress. The point here is that this graph lied in two very different ways. First, by having wrong data, which is kind of unforgivable. But leaving that aside, if it were correct data, in my book, it would still be kind of lying because it would have exaggerated the difference by using a non-zero x-axis. It would have all of the information to help you understand what it actually meant, but the point of a graphical representation of data is to help you understand the actual situation, and I think it would still be failing at that. So with all that in mind, let's talk about how
yeah, like, even in California, man, take a look at what the results looked like in California back in 2020. Joe Biden got 63 to 34. So basically like 2-1 in favor of Joe Biden. And this is what the county map looked like. And here's what it's looking like right now in California, with it more like a 60-40 or 3/5 to 2/5, and like a significant number of counties shifting red. Pretty not good. 2-1 to 3-2 is a huge movement. Yeah, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. Yeah. I still can't believe that feeling during election night where we took a look at New Jersey and found that New Jersey was up by like 6 points for Kamala. New Jersey. Not on the proportion, DM. It's pretty locked in on the proportion. If Dems keep their current trajectory, could we lose California? Brother, if Dems keep their current trajectory, we could lose the country. We could lose everything.
The president of the United States is elected by the states.
Hank is a liberal who I think has a difficulty adjusting to the implications of this. Yeah, you can be the smartest guy in the world, but ideology is ideology. You know, it doesn't change the fact that from Hank Green's perspective, like,
not by the citizens. So we look at the states, not the citizens. But still, we look at these maps and we think they are representing humans rather than states. Now, if we actually want to know how people voted, we need a map that shows color gradients, because trust me, as a person who lives in a red state, I don't like that my existence gets completely ignored by electoral maps. But then maybe we also still have to correct for population, which makes maps look super weird. But I also feel like we need to talk about these maps, these vote swing maps, which have become all the rage because they do show something important, but the important thing they show is very specific and not entirely what it seems. These maps tell you the 2020 to 2024 percentage difference between the spread between Republicans and Democrats in every county in America, which is a sentence that I find much more confusing than I initially find the map to be. My brain looks at the map and it says, this is how many more people.
The f does Hank Green know about polling? Hank Green's a smart guy. I'm not trying to like insult or discount him. The problem with liberals isn't that they're stupid. It's like this is that unironically, that's always been like a stupid way of thinking about politics. Smart guys have smart ideology. That's not really how it works. There's a relationship between like level of education and susceptibility to propaganda, but in terms of like the way you respond to this information, a lot of it is just framing, and the framing that I have is, you know, a Marxist one, and the framing that he has presumably isn't. So he's going to engage with this information differently.
Voted for Trump this time rather than last time. But that's not necessarily true. Now, if I'm thinking hard, I might think, oh, well, it could be that Donald Trump got the same number of votes, but Kamala Harris got fewer than Joe Biden. But it could also mean that they both got fewer, but Trump still increased his margin, or they both got more and Trump increased his margin. It only shows the percentage increase in the margin, no absolute numbers at all.
That's true, but that's the point of the map. It's very good at showing that, right? Because otherwise, if you want to look at all of those different edge cases where like both votes grew, but Trump's more than Kamala's, or both votes depreciated, but Kamala's more than Trump's, or whatever, you would need to like parse a bunch of different like graphs to contain all that information. Whereas the county by county shift between 2020 and 2024 is so pronounced and so consistent across the country. Like there's a reason why it looks as stark as it does, right? It's not like it's not like useless information at all. It's just you have to know what to do with it.
That it still suffers from similar problems to electoral maps, with a special one of its own, which is that this is a county-by-county map, which means that areas with a lot of red aren't...
Why do people cling to ideology like Hank here when you said earlier that ideology means nothing and material interests everything? I don't think you understood my initial point. I was talking about the interests of capital holders, the bourgeoisie. Hank Green is successful. He's not like literally part of the capital. He's not like in the upper echelon ruling society, which by the way, if you take a look at literally the entire business class in the United States, all of them have bent the knee to Trump. Many of them did a long time ago. Dozens and dozens of powerful people in the GOP and the business world who denounced Trump after January 6th, all of them have bent the knee now. Material interest. Doesn't he own several companies? Probably. Do you think that he's up there with like Elon? Do you think he's like lobbying at the Oval Office? Technically, you're a part of the capital class if you have like shares of a company, because that's income you could potentially earn off of ownership and not work. But we're talking about like a distinct class of people, not literally in like a menial and technical sense in their relationship to the means of production, but in terms of their like social affluence, their relationship to those who have that, you know?
Necessarily areas with huge swings. Instead, they are areas with small counties. And some states have way more counties than others. Alaska doesn't have counties at all. I didn't know that until I looked at this map and I was like, why does Alaska?
I actually didn't either. I learned that from election night looking at the county map.
Only have one arrow. America's weird. And then last, you got the same problem with this map as with all the others. You got like a people versus land problem more generally. Each arrow is its size based on percentage, which means that the arrow for Loving County in Texas is the same scale as the arrow for LA County in California, even though Loving County has 96 voters.
But that's exactly the point, that there was a rightward shift everywhere. In cities, suburbs, rural areas, in areas that are largely black, in areas that are largely white, in areas with a lot of immigrants, like across the board, with just a few pockets, Utah, a few parts of Colorado, Georgia suburb, blah, blah, blah. Like we've seen the exceptions, northwestern Washington, but like that's the thing that makes the map so significant. It's so pronounced.
Look, all of these things are super useful tools. It would be much harder to understand any of this stuff without these maps and graphs. I'm not arguing that. They're tools meant to simplify, and they do a good job, but that can increase the risk that we learn the wrong things from looking at them. The second thing, I'm very discouraged by this. I decided to make a video about a map today because I felt like I had to do something that like referenced the reality of the moment, but I just can't get deeper than that. Like I don't feel at all qualified to do the analysis, though. I don't know. Maybe I'll do some on Hank's channel.
Bring me on, Hank, tag me in. Vosh, well, maybe semantics, I hate the framing of a rightward shift. It seems like there has been a slight rightward shift, but it's mostly just Democrats not turning out. That's the main thing. Also, as we looked at earlier, Democrats are now the party of the elites. Rhetorically. Like, they're the party of well-educated, higher-income people, not, like, literally the billionaires. And Republicans are now the party of the lower-income, lower-educated people. So that's interesting. Do you think Mr. Bonarelli will have to do a moment of reflection after the election? I live now with a deep hope, and I know there's no way to say this without coming across like I'm very similar to many smug leftists online. I live with a deep and maybe very naive hope that there can be some kind of reconciliation, and we can all, and liberals, myself, whatever, kind of work together in a difficult time, at least on the understanding that we have to take lessons from this election about populism, about messaging, about the importance of a strong narrative, about policy not mattering as much as the appearance of policy, of, well, populism, largely, of Bernie Sanders and the stuff that he represented, the fact that he did well with the groups that kind of ran over to Trump. And I guess, like, I don't really hold out hope for him specifically because I don't... for a variety of reasons, but I really do like, look, there are different camps of liberals right now, or sorry, of leftists right now, and a lot of them are in the stage of like the Chapo trap house, we're all being sent to the death camps, but haha, at least the liberals were wrong and I'm right. I take no enjoyment for being right, because I'm always right, you know? That's the hedonic treadmill, okay? As someone who's always right all the time, now it bores me, okay? I recline on my, you know, like Dracula. Being right all the time is feeding me grapes and I don't even taste them, okay? So this isn't about that. I just want the country to make it through this and all of the people in it, at least all the cool ones. And for that to happen, we need to we need to learn some lessons from this. I know that there are a lot of liberals right now are still in the stage where it's like they're blaming the left, they're blaming the Gaza protesters, they're blaming Arabs, they're blaming queer people, they're blaming, like, that's a very online perspective. It's very, very, very online, you know? I don't know. I don't actually know if Destiny is. I don't watch his content. Maybe he's not. I don't know. I just, that's like, I have no room in my heart right now for, like, the big line in the sand between myself and them. Like, I don't want to draw another one or any new ones or deepen the ones that are already there.
Sometime soon. I do feel like there's been a lot of bad takes that are not representative of reality, but I digress. At the moment, I don't have a lot to add here, except that I think the next 4 years, we're going to need people to have energy to push back against some of the weirdest and wildest things that the Trump administration is going to want to do. I wrote about this in the special edition of We're Here that I sent out earlier this week. I'll link to it below. But I think the answer to the question, what do we do now, at the moment, is anything you want. Like, get out of bed, get outside, go do things that are close. Do things you got.
I said this on Twitter the other day, and I feel like I'm still workshopping this position, but I do believe in it very strongly. It's that Democrats have made fun of Republicans for years now because Republicans are cultish and they wear Trump merchandise everywhere. And I genuinely think that Democrats are only going to be able to take this country back if they can field a candidate capable of inspiring that same behavior in their own followers, you know? Like I think in this era, victory from the left is a victory where people on the left are going outside in, like, I don't know, Bernie Sanders hats with Bernie Sanders tote bags and Bernie Sanders shirts all the time, flags on the truck, everything, as loud and as proud as any Republican has been about Trump. We make fun of it, like, with regard to them for their culty behavior, but, like, you know, we used to have a lot more energy behind the way we promoted our political candidates. How excited do people get about people like, you know, Kamala Harris, right? I tweeted this, and yeah, look at the big FDR head. Did anyone build a big head of Kamala Harris? No, I don't think so. Exactly. That's exactly my point. We need a big head. Listen, we just need everyone looking like this absolute snack of a man who was a staffer in the Bernie 2016 campaign. Average Bernie male, TBH. Yeah, true. True.
You gotta do things that make you happy, things where you connect with other people. The election, I think, for a lot of people, I know it was, for me, it was long, it was stressful, it was a long fight. It is done now, and at least now, I guess, we know what we're facing. I often respond to situations like this with work, and I did some fun work this week. I made like a very dumb tea quiz that helps you pick.
Unironically, I like it when good cultists are good and bad cultists are bad. I mean, we say cult behavior, but like genuinely, there's nothing innately cultish about participating in a like mass populist movement. The cultish element with Trump supporters goes beyond the like merchandise. Like they're cultish about Trump in a bunch of really psychotic ways. The parasocial relationship, the like, you know, the like Christ allegories or whatever, the obsession with framing him like a savior who's martyring himself for their sake, like this shit like that. You can have a mass popular movement with a lot of enthusiasm without adopting those elements of the, you know, of of their behavior. We need a left-wing alternative media consolidation into a centralized and populist Daily Wire type network. Yeah, well, good luck getting the funding for that, you know? The entire capital class has sided with Trump. Is there even anyone in the Dems who could inspire voters like Bernie could? Right now, no one. The closest person that I could think of is Jon Stewart, and I don't know how much I'd even support his run. Gavin Newsom would have a decent shot at, like, winning, possibly, assuming democracy isn't completely eroded by the time he gets a shot at it. But he's also a fucking psychopath, so I don't like him. AOC is too young to get the same kind of support that Bernie got. Also, she's a woman, which, as we've seen, sexism is an undeniable element of the you know, the dynamic. We just need Walz unleashed. Walz is compromised. He's associated with a historic loss. No. It doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter who the person is. What matters is what they can do. And that's all it takes. There's no way Walz could ever run now because he would be asked every day on the campaign trail, how are you going to differentiate yourself from the historical loser that you ran with? And he wouldn't be able to do it because he'd be running as a Democrat. And the Democrats forbid you from shit-talking their own people because all of them, as soon as they stop being politicians, become high-paid consultants whose job it is to drag down the living. They are like the dead. They anchor the living to the past, you know? FDR was a failed VP candidate too. Not like this. Not like this. Walz would not be seen as like an up-and-comer who failed for a time but is now like rising up. Walz would be seen as like a remnant of a dead party. Well, it depends on how it's done, DM. It's more about like the level of enthusiasm, you know? I definitely think, like, I definitely don't think it benefits Democrats very much that like Republicans are always much more enthusiastic about Trump than Democrats are about anyone. The only people who get enthusiastic about people like Biden or Kamala Harris are these like young college age, like policy wonk, resist lib type, you know, either they're getting like paid or they're like directly connected or whatever, or they're like the overeducated. They're like the consultant class, you know? Meanwhile, like what kind of person on the right gets excited about Trump? Everyone, from top to bottom, from the wealthiest and most powerful guy in the world, Elon Musk, all the way down to people barely scraping by at like no income, off welfare and food stamps in West Virginia. All of them are insane about Trump. And it's just, you know, you're not going to get that level of support without populism. You got to dip your toes in it. You got to dip your dick in it, you know?